In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. On the Australia Day weekend, there were a group of 30 or more neo-Nazis who descended on a small Victorian town. And this group of people, they wore balaclavas, they burnt crosses, and they chanted "Hail Hitler," shouted "White Power," Ku Klux Klan. On their website and social media, they describe First Nations people as being subhuman, and that they are fueled by a pure Cronulla energy. Thankfully, the anti-terrorism squad of the police are investigating. I had my own encounter with someone holding certainly less violent and less extreme, but still very disturbing thoughts in the last week. I remember Father Rod talking about shaving his head. At the same time, I was getting a haircut from my QAnon-believing barber. Now, if you don't know what QAnon is, it's a rather bizarre internet conspiracy theory which holds that President Trump was fighting a secret war against a cabal of Satan-worshipping, cannibalistic pedophiles, elites who were supposedly working in the government and in media and all sorts of places. I had never been to this hairdresser before, and had no idea that he held those views or where our conversation would go. And every time he tried to tell me something, I just very politely pushed back and challenged some of the thinking, and then he would turn off the clippers and pull out his mobile phone and pull up something on YouTube to insist upon the truth of what he was saying. And I'd never encountered anything like that. I didn't know what to do or what to say. And after 30 minutes, he said, "Oh, we're done. But I haven't quite finished. Come back tomorrow and I'll tidy it up." I have never had a part two to a haircut, so I did not go back. I found that entire ordeal, though, confusing and exhausting, and I was down the rabbit hole of the things that he was saying and arguing, and no matter which thread I pulled on, he went to a different place. And if I'm honest, I couldn't quite separate the crazy talk with the young person before me. They were just sort of fused together. And so I was thinking about that, both experiences, as I came to this reading for this week. I've been thinking about how racist ideology and wild conspiracy theories can become a cage, and it can entrap and entangle a person. And so that's the only way they can look out into the world. In the Gospel reading, we had Mark speaks of unclean spirits. Elsewhere in the Gospel of Mark, he talks about demons, and he uses the words interchangeably, unclean spirit and demon. He goes back and forth. The word demon is in Greek, daimon, and it means, or it comes, we think, from the word which means to divide. So a daimon is one who divides or who scatters, who splinters. And this is the thing that stands out. This is the first time in Mark's Gospel that Jesus encounters a demon. And where is it happening? In a place of worship. It's happening in a holy place. It's not in the marketplace or anything like that. It's in what we would think of as a church. And so there's a warning there that the voice of division and scattering can be found in holy places, in churches as well. And you may have noticed that Mark says he says one unclean spirit, singular. But then the unclean spirit says, "Are you here to destroy us?" Us. So who's the us? The threat seems to be that the unclean spirit is entangled. It's encircled the man. And so if you drive the spirit out, it will destroy the person. That the cure will be worse than the disease. That this is drinking bleach to cure COVID. That if you in some way exorcise that demon, it will bring destruction. And that seems to be the threat. But Jesus, of course, he disentangles, he looks past the demon and effectively says, "That's not who you are." To the man, "That's not who you are. And you can be free of that." One of the commentators describes this reading as the story of a man and his cage. The man and his cage. And it's a useful metaphor, because if you look at the man and the demon, as being completely different and distinct, we downplay the significance upon his life and about how it's ruined his relationships and his being and his psyche and his mind and his wellness. But if you see them as just one entity, one being, you're downplaying or denying his humanity. And so the commentator says, think of this as a man and his cage. A man and his cage. And I was thinking about the cage of racism. And that's the way you see and enter into the world. And I was thinking about the cage of conspiracy theories. And that's the only way you can engage with your perception of reality. A man and his cage. And Jesus looks into this man with the unclean spirit and he says, that's not who you are. That's entrapped you. But it's not your identity and it's not your being, and I want you to be free of that. And people live in all sorts of cages. They live in cages of all sorts of addictions, of drugs and alcohol and pornography and gambling. And they are stuck in unhealthy relationships and workplaces which crush their spirit and cages of their own anger and their temper. And you might think of examples of your own or from your own life. Things where you can say, that's a cage and it's not who I am, but it's entrapped me and it's entangled me and I need to be free of it. I work in a jail, so I am very interested in what is it that brings our young people into that cycle of drug abuse. For some people, the answer it's just chemical addiction. And that's a part of it, but there is more to that story. It was a famous experiment done years ago and they turned it into an ad, an anti-drug ad, where what they did was they took rats and they put one into a cage. And they'd give the rats 2 bottles of water. One was just plain water and the other was laced with heroin or cocaine. And they'd watch to see what would happen. And of course the rats tried both but then kept going back to the drug water. And they became addicted and they kept drinking it until eventually they died. And then someone noticed, they said, why do we just put one rat into the cage? Why is that the experiment? And what would happen if he called it a rat park. What if we built a big rat park and we put other rats into it and we gave them tunnels to dig and balls to play with and good food and company with their rat friends? And we'll give them the same bottles of water and see which one they drink. And by and large, the rats shunned the drug water. Well, they might try it, but then they stayed away and they only drank the healthy water. And so they thought, well, what if we redo the experiment, but we take those rats from the first cage and we get them addicted and then we put them in Rat Park and see what happens. And they found that the good cage saved them. They stopped drinking the drug water. There was withdrawal, but over time they let it go. Of course, there is truth in chemical addiction and physical substance abuse and the pull of the drugs. But there is more to it than that. There is the social. And we need to bond and we need to feel connected to people. We need to feel important and know we matter and that we are loved. And we need an environment which is healthy and which meets our basic social needs. Maybe that's why COVID has been so hard on so many people, feeling isolated. And we know this time will pass, but just not feeling that connection, it hurts us. We need an environment that is going to meet the basic needs that we have, but we need to feel connected to other people as well. In this passage of Scripture, Jesus meets this man with the unclean spirit, and he says, that's not you. That's not who you are. I'm going to be preaching to myself now, and maybe for you as well. Have you ever found yourself caught up in a behaviour or in a way of thinking, and it wasn't good and healthy, and you thought, why am I doing this? Why am I stuck in this way? It's not me. And that's a good instinct. That's right. That's not who you are. I do want to sound a word of caution though when we talk about cages. We need to be careful that we are discerning in the way we apply this, because sometimes we've got it horribly wrong. And I'm thinking of the way that people of different sexuality have been mistreated and stigmatised. It seems to me some parts of our community and the church continues to insist to members of the LGBTI community, that's not really who you are. We can fix that from you. We ought to say so-called gay conversion therapy is wrong. It's wrong. And telling people we can exorcise the demon of homosexuality and pray away the gay is wrong. And we've just not listened well when people have said, this is a part of who I am. This is me. This is who I am. And instead we've become some parts of our communities and faith communities fixated on curing them and fixing them and exorcising them. And that has been wrong. And tremendous psychological and emotional and spiritual harm has been done. And so we just need to be so careful as we come to this passage and this way of thinking, and just discerning lest we inflict spiritual abuse on other people. And so I'm just inviting all of us, rather than look at other people or look at groups of people, to just turn that eye inward a little bit and think to ourselves and just ask that question, am I stuck in a cage? Am I free? Or do I feel like I'm just stuck? Is there a part of me, or that feels like a part of me, that I can say, that's not who I am. That's not what I'm about. It's a cage, and I just long to be free from it. There's a 4th century bishop called Gregory of Nyssa, and he said, sin happens when you refuse to keep growing. Sin happens when you refuse to keep growing. And that can be a cage too. We just stay where we are. We stay stuck. When we just refuse to grow in faith or to deepen our walk with the Lord, or when we just are unwilling or unable to explore and deepen our humanity and our empathy for other people. Sin happens when we refuse to keep growing. And Christians believe something that seems to be a paradox. We seem to be saying something that doesn't make sense, and yet I think intuitively we know it to be true. That we will be most free when we are ready and able to recognise the authority of Jesus. And Mark sets this gospel up. In chapter 1, he uses the words, you heard it, authority. He repeats the word. He taught with authority. A word we've heard before, exousia, means out of his substance, out of his essence, out of his being. And we believe that when we recognise that authority, we are most free. A pastor once said, Jesus doesn't come and ask if he can hang out with us. He commands us to follow him. And he has total authority and will settle for nothing less. And he comes to set us free from our paradigms of racism, conspiracy theories, whichever has a hold of our lives that is not in fact who we are. He comes to set us free so that we can keep on growing and that we might be ready to love God and to love and to serve one another. The Lord be with you.
And